In a franchise that from the very beginning specialized itself in gratuitous violence and absolutely outlandish finishing moves, you have to do something especially crazy for your finisher to be considered one of the most iconic in the series. But if there's any one way to do that, it's definitely turning into a dragon and chomping someone's head off. Well, that's exactly what Liu Kang of Mortal Kombat fame did, and now fans are excited to see this famous fatality make it into the upcoming movie. But there are some differences to address. To understand why Liu Kang's dragon move is so iconic, we have to go back a couple of decades. While it is most certainly true that back when the first Mortal Kombat was released in arcades back in 1992, it took the world and media by storm with its comparatively photorealistic graphics and explicit violence, it almost looks downright tame by today's standards. And the same can be said for some of its characters. While Liu Kang, at the time little more than a Bruce Lee pastiche that threw the occasional fireball, was fairly one note and didn't even have the dragon fatality we're discussing yet. That didn't happen until Mortal Kombat 2, but when it did, it was a sensation of its own. For one, it was brutal. Imagine the guy in front of you just turning into a dragon and biting everything above the hip off of you in one chomp. It also has the distinction of being the first instance of shapeshifting before the animality was introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, where every fighter could now turn into an animal and perform a beastly finishing move. Yeah, no, that wasn't something Mortal Kombat Annihilation came up with on its own, and thank God for that. I really don't want to live in a world where that is what defined cool animal transformations for the series.
Not good enough.
As the sequels got ever more numerous and the series made its way to more and more advanced consoles and expanded further on the lore, however, Liu Kang's dragon fatality did change with it. The dragon went from a classic green scaly serpent to one of a more silvery hue, for instance, but it later got even wilder. Liu Kang's defining ability as a fighter in the series lies with his mastery of what can best be described as pure fire magic. He's capable of not just throwing the obligatory fireball that he can even occasionally shape into dragon forms just for a little bit of added mystical zest, but also imbuing his limbs in flames to further strengthen his already devastating attacks. He's even been shown to teleport in sudden bursts of flame. So, it only made sense to combine this with his ultimate dragon fatality, giving him the ability to not transform per se, but summon a huge dragon seemingly entirely made out of his magical flames to fight by his side. From what the trailers have shown us, this is the version of the fatality that the movie has decided to go with, and this is where the theories come in. That is, theories regarding a new element to Mortal Kombat lore that the movie is seeking to address: the arcana. Like many other fighting games, Mortal Kombat has at least one foot firmly rooted in genuine real-world martial arts, and a much larger percentage of its whole body wrapped up in crazy off-the-wall fantasy. Not only does the series run on its premise of a deadly martial arts tournament across dimensions and feature a large cast of characters hailing from various mystical realms, practically every character seems to possess at least some level of supernatural ability. Liu Kang has his fire, Sub-Zero throws ice, Raiden is a literal thunder god, some are straight-up monsters from other planes, and even the human characters are most often extraordinary, whether it be through cybernetic implants like Jax or other supernatural abilities. Traditionally, each character has had their own explanation for this, rooted in their own stories and experiences, which, for better or for worse, has made the Mortal Kombat lore widespread and complicated. The movie seems to want to simplify matters somewhat by giving its characters a shared origin point in the form of arcana, a magic force that is unique to every fighter that possesses it. And if the new lead character, Cole Young, being born with a Mortal Kombat logo on his chest is anything to go by, it may be granted at birth, marking every fighter as an extraordinary chosen individual. While this seems like an attempt to level the playing field, it doesn't negate Liu Kang's dragon fatality potentially being one of the most powerful and impressive in the cast, however, depending on how exactly the movie is planning to depict it. If he is indeed summoning a fire dragon that is capable of fighting independently, he is essentially creating an extra fighter in any match that he's in, and one that dwarfs just about every opponent to boot. I would imagine controlling a whole separate entity on top of still performing all manners of badass Shaolin moves is on a bit of a different playing field at least. But hey, that's fighting game heroes for you. Always gotta be a little bit extra. Whether it's a transformation or a summon remains to be seen. But either way, we're getting ourselves an awesome dragon on top of all the blood-gushing, fatality-performing martial arts we've come to know and love the long-running franchise for. Regardless of whether or not the rest of the movie is any good, seeing a giant fire dragon on the big screen is a win in my book.